A Miss Asturias becomes the protagonist of the second session of the trial in the Coldo case at the Supreme Court. Let's get started. Music! Hello everyone, Medidas Cautelares. Today we're back in the studio. We're not recording from a car today. We had time to come back because the trial ended earlier. You already know that here at Medidas Cautelares, we cover the trial at the Supreme Court from start to finish, and that's why depending on when it ends, you get the video sooner or later. And today the second session of the trial in the Coldo case has taken place. And as I said, the main figure today was someone we already know well, you could say, the former Miss Asturias for women over 30, since that was the category for contestants over 30, Claudia Montes. And why is Claudia Montes the main figure? Because she was given a position thanks to her close friend, the former Minister of Transport, José Luis Ábalos, you know, who at the time was Pedro Sánchez's right-hand man in the Socialist Party and in the government. And of course, Ábalos got her the job. Ábalos was generous with what wasn't his, you know, he would get jobs for his friends, we don't know, prostitutes, lovers, girlfriends, partners, but always with other people's money. He was a good Samaritan in his own way. We're going to tell you everything that happened in this second session of the Coldo case trial with this woman as the central figure. By the way, if you haven't done it yet, remember to subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel. Come on, our next goal is to reach 150,000 subscribers. And now let's share the screen so we can follow this information closely. There you have the main character, actually Miss Asturias, Claudia Montes. In the Supreme Court, she literally said to Ábalos and Coldo, "They didn't tell me, I've pulled strings for you." She admitted they pulled strings for her, but claims she didn't know when they got her into Logi Rail, that public company. And that's how she presented herself. Claudia Montes, nothing like Jessica Rodriguez, who showed up yesterday dressed in black. We don't know if she was wearing a wig with sunglasses on. Claudia Montes, no. Claudia Montes arrived honestly with style, wearing high heels, which really caught a lot of attention. Because after all, we're talking about the Supreme Court, a place that usually has a lot of prestige. People dress very formally, very proper. And she showed up as she saw fit, and she showed up like that in a short dress. And this woman has testified as a witness in the Supreme Court. And it must be said that Claudia Montes has admitted, this is the most important thing, she has admitted that she got the job through connections. But she has defended herself by saying that she didn't know about it. That is, she had a relationship with José Luis Ábalos. A friendship that she met him at a rally in Gijón, that they became very close friends, that they exchanged messages on social media and so on. And well, after that close relationship, Ábalos wanted to help her, he wanted to help her, and that's when he pulled some strings for her in that public company, Logi Rail. There was also a very funny moment in Claudia Montes' statement because she literally said that Ábalos helps her to become more cultured in politics. Honestly, this trial is giving us some real gems, isn't it? Claudia Montes was hired through connections for several months in this public company after she asked for it. Well, she told the then minister José Luis Ábalos, "Hey, I saw a job opening, let's see if you can give me a hand," and so on. And well, he and his former advisor, Coldo Garcia, processed her resume so she would be hired by Logi Rail, where she was paid. She claims she was paid to read books during work. Can you believe this? You are showing me that you did something behind the scenes. But Coldo has never told me, "Hey, you got the job through connections," Montes stated before the Supreme Court in her testimony as a witness. And yes, he also admitted that he sent some photos to Coldo along with his resume when they started processing his hiring at Logi Rail. Basically what she said is that she saw that job offer and sent it to Ábalos, and then things happened. They called her, they hired her, but she didn't know if it was because of that request for help that Ábalos had made. Honestly, it's quite a surprising statement. In this regard, when asked by the parties involved in the trial if she was getting paid without working, Claudia Montes said that she was fit and qualified for the position, and that she worked more hours than were stipulated, even receiving higher pay for her overtime hours. In this regard, when questioned about her professional duties, she stated that she spent her time reading books. All the books she read during work hours were related to trains. Montes stated this when asked if she believed her role was being valued by the company. In fact, to prove that she was working, she offered the court, presided over by Judge Andres Martinez Arrieta, her Instagram history, since according to her, she would upload photos of herself having breakfast next to her computer. As you can see, this is classic Spain. What's happening in the Supreme Court is classic Spain. And Torrente for president, I think, falls short compared to what we're seeing in the Supreme Court. Montes has stated that he stopped working when he suffered at his job. He stopped working. She suffered alleged sexual harassment by Coldo Garcia, who had told her he was her boss despite not having any position at Logi Rail. When she requested leave, according to her, she was fired without apparent reason. The dismissal came when I was on leave due to alleged harassment. In this context, she explained that before these events, she did speak daily with Ábalos, whom she met at a PSOE rally, as I mentioned earlier, and that, according to her, they became great friends. Ábalos spoke with me daily as a fellow party member and as a friend, and I also spoke daily with Coldo because he was my boss. This is what she said. It was as a result of that friendship that Montes asked Ábalos to help her find a job. He agreed, according to her, because they were friends and he knew she was a single mother without a job. This is what Claudia Montes said. It should be noted that before Claudia Montes, her former bosses at Logi Rail also gave statements. Claudia Montes' boss at the time she was hired and her boss afterwards. The boss who was there when Claudia Montes was hired, what Jose Angel Mendez basically said, is that he noticed that suddenly Claudia Montes started being absent. She started missing work and he decided to start disciplinary proceedings. At that moment, what a coincidence. At that moment, this man, who was the chief executive, the highest executive at Logi Rail, was dismissed. He was dismissed after opening a disciplinary file against Claudia Montes for not showing up for work, and someone else replaced him as head of Logi Rail. And this man, what he stated in the Supreme Court also as a witness is that Claudia Montes did not go to work, because after all they had put her in a room almost next to some stairs without a computer facing the wall, and that under those circumstances she could no longer carry out the work that had been assigned to her. No more and no less than the fourth most valuable contract that the public company Logi Rail had, which accounted for 5% of Logi Rail's income. And this had been assigned to Claudia Montes, someone who had been Miss Asturias. As you can see, in Spain this is like the American dream. You can achieve your Spanish dream and go from being Miss Asturias to managing, well, the fourth most important project of a public company, millions of euros. This can only happen, as I said, in Spain. This has been one of the statements we've heard throughout the day, but I have to tell you that there have also been other statements that were very revealing. For example, from an executive of Ineco, of Traxatec, who was familiar with the hiring or the favoritism shown to the other prostitute, or we don't even know what to call her anymore, because according to Jessica Rodriguez, she's not a prostitute. But anyway, Jessica Rodriguez was given a job at Ineco and Traxatec by Ábalos and Coldo, two public companies. And well, suddenly there were some workers at Traxatec who started to say, hey, why isn't this woman working? Anyway, we want to get in touch with her. And Jessica complained to Ábalos. Ábalos spoke with the president of ADIF, who was the top official, Pardo de Vera, whom you might know. And Pardo de Vera passed it on to one of Traxatec's subordinates. They should leave Jessica Rodriguez alone because she had called Ábalos, the minister had called, and Jessica Rodriguez was complaining that they weren't leaving her alone. And that's where the famous story comes from about whether she was Coldo's niece, Ábalos' niece. That's what they had told many workers at that public company, so that people would say, oh, she was sent by the minister, they say she's his niece, let's be careful. Well, this has been a real joke. A person like Jessica Rodriguez, of course, without any qualifications either, who was just given a job, Ábalos' mistress, in two public companies, Ineco and Traxatec. There are so many women that I guess you must get confused. Claudia Montes, a friend of Ábalos, was handed a job through connections at the public company Logi Rail. Jessica Rodriguez, prostitute, partner, girlfriend, lover, mistress, call her whatever you want, who was handed a job through connections at the public company Ineco and at Traxatec. Now, you might say this is being tried in the Supreme Court. These aren't just rumors. This isn't Salvame or Salsa Rosa. This is what's actually on trial. Among other issues before the Supreme Court, of course, not the only ones, because in the end, the main reason for the trial is the illegal kickbacks they took. Coldo, José Luis Ábalos, and also the businessman Victor Daldama for buying and selling medical supplies during the pandemic for the famous face masks. But these crony hires at public companies are also being tried by Ábalos for all his friends, so this also needs to be mentioned. And that's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares. We'll see what the third session of tomorrow's trial at the Supreme Court in the Coldo case brings us. I'm just telling you that it's expected that the famous businesswoman Carmen Pano, who was the one that took the 90,000 euros to Ferraz in 2 bags, will testify. So I think it could be very interesting. We'll share all the details here on Medidas Cautelares. You already know that you can leave your comments, your likes, because what YouTube's algorithm values most now is whether you like the content. So, leave your comments, likes, share it, whatever you want. Of course, only if you liked it. You can also become members like the Chosen Ones for less than 3 euros a month, or like the Supreme Ones for less than 7 euros a month. In addition, you can make your financial contributions via Bizum at 627-556-370. 627-556-370. And we're actually going to dedicate today's show to Santiago Cervera, who made a very generous donation, a very generous contribution through that Bizum line at 627-556-370. So this one is for you, Santiago. Thank you very much. The most important thing, as I always tell you, is that this information reaches everyone because information is power. See you soon.